So the court's closed today, which is nice because I get a day to kind of work in my private office and get caught up on some things. But I also wanted to take the opportunity to kind of answer some of the questions that people have been posting that I don't know, I find kind of interesting. I guess if you guys are interested, then we'll go from there. So a lot of questions are about how I switched from defense to being a prosecutor and how that all kind of transpired. So without going into too much detail to protect privacy of other individuals, what I can say is that when I started out in law, I was doing a private solo practice in Colon, Michigan. Again, very small town, it's the magic capital of the world, lots of fun things go on here, but it's very tiny. So we jokingly called it small town law. Basically, whatever comes in the door, you do. I didn't really do bankruptcy, that's a pretty specialized area, or a lot of employment law, that sort of thing. So I did a lot of divorce, custody, adoptions, guardianships, estate planning, land transactions, criminal law. I mean, you name it. It was just kind of, you eat what you kill early on, and if you don't take work, then you don't get paid. So as things went on, I was given the opportunity to get on the criminal defender contract. And in our county, the way the contract works is there's a group of private attorneys, which you'll see all of them. I mean, you see if you watch 3B District Court, there's a rotation. So if you get on the contract with the attorneys and you get put on the rotation, then you are able to, or you're required to take the cases that are given to you on the rotation. The way that they've done it for many years is that whoever's week it is for felonies, you get every felony that is arraigned during that week, and you take the case from there. If there are co-defendants or something like that, then the next person on the list gets them. Or if there are any conflicts, like if somebody has previously represented them, or some of the attorneys do municipal work where they are the village or city attorney. And if the village police or the city police are the ones that filed the case against the defendant, then obviously there's a conflict, so it gets passed to the next person. So when I did all of that, it became very time consuming. You have to do the best job that you can. You can't just kind of go through the motions, and you have to give your best no matter what type of case it is, no matter how ungrateful the client is, which unfortunately is sometimes the case. Now, granted, a lot of the people, they struggle with alcohol or drug addiction or mental health, whatever it might be. So I don't take it personally necessarily when they would be unhappy or complain or that sort of thing, because you just try to do your best and get them to understand why you're doing what you're doing and try to pick the best form of action for their case. So some of the more difficult cases, I had a murder trial in, I want to say it was 2014, that was very difficult, very time consuming, very frustrating for me, and it still bothers me to this day. I don't know, talk about it at the prosecutor's office, but the jury decided, and I guess it is what it is. Then I had another murder trial just a couple of years ago at the very end of my time on the contract. And that one wasn't as difficult necessarily in the fact pattern, but more so in the emotional aspect of dealing with families that lost their loved ones, and dealing with a client who, we did our best to try to figure out like the mental health issues and how those interact with behaviors. And again, without going into great detail, it was very difficult, and I had a very successful private practice. So taking weeks off at a time to prepare and then do a trial of that nature, it was very difficult. It's a flat rate of pay for the contract. Whatever you get. And there wasn't at that time anyway, an amount that was associated with the harder you work or the more motions you file or whatever, you didn't get more money. So I know that has bothered a lot of people, and that is what led to the Michigan Indigent Defense Council coming forward with some protocol and requirements. And that's where you'll see, like in our county, we have a chief public defender now, which we did not have when I was on the contract. So there are more rules. The state is looking at how these counties are doing this and looking at how a flat rate is maybe not the best way to go, because although I trust the attorneys to do the best job that they can no matter what, there's always that innate concern that if you're not getting paid for something, maybe you're going to take shortcuts or not file that motion that should have been filed, or whatever the case may be. So when I was done with the contract, it was a difficult time because I do enjoy criminal law and the research that goes into it. Criminal law is interesting because it really does change almost on a daily basis certain suppression issues or evidentiary issues, and you have to kind of stay on top of what the legislature is doing, and what the appeals court is doing, what the Supreme Court is doing, and what's going on in the nation. So it is interesting in that respect. But I felt, I guess going back, how did I go to the prosecutor's office? I had done municipal prosecution for the Village of Colon for many years, but it's not huge. I mean, basically contracts, reviewing contracts for them, and doing traffic court type stuff where if somebody's driving suspended and they write it under the village ordinance, I would handle it. So not a ton. In May of 2020, our elected prosecutor at the time had some issues and was not able to continue working. As probably you remember, that was right at the beginning of COVID, and so the way the court system was running or not running at that point, there were a lot of felony cases that were put on hold. So the preliminary exam, which I guess I should probably do a whole other talk on what is a preliminary exam and how felony cases work, but short version of it is when someone is charged with a felony, they're afforded the opportunity to have this preliminary exam. It's basically like a mini trial where the court must determine whether or not there's probable cause to charge the person with the crime, probable cause that each of the elements of the crime is met, and probable cause that this is the person who should be charged with it. If that happens in the preliminary exam, or they waive the preliminary exam, the case is then bound over to circuit court, and that's where all felonies are dealt with. So when COVID kind of shut down our whole court system for a while, these cases just kept backing up. So if you watch 3B court regularly, you'll see that on any Tuesday where we have probable cause conferences, which is like the meeting of the prosecutor and the attorney to see if we are going to have that preliminary exam the following Tuesday, we have between probably 10 to 25 per week. So if you think back when the courts started closing in March and April and May, those cases really piled up. So when the prosecutor was not able to be in the office and do things anymore, and they were already short the other prosecutor that had been hired as an APA to do the felony work, my colleague Josh Robert was the chief assistant at the time, and he reached out to me to see if it was something that I would consider. He knew that I had practiced in criminal law for many years, I think 13 years at that point, and I was not on the contract, so I didn't have any conflicts with that. So I thought about it, and Josh is a great person, and he is a trusted colleague of mine. We can butt heads on cases, but still respectfully agree to disagree. And I knew that he needed the assistance. So I thought, what's the harm, right? I was kind of getting burned out with some of the more difficult divorce and custody cases. Those can be very draining on you emotionally. It's hard. And with COVID, people weren't coming in as often for estate planning and things like that. They just didn't have that on their mind, I guess, or the cash to do it, whatever the case might be. So I was a little bit slow at the private office anyway, so I did agree to go and work at the prosecutor's office 2 days a week and basically work through the felony caseload that had been backlogged. I want to say when I started in June of 2020, there were about 75 or so cases that were backlogged that needed their preliminary exams. And in the past, it had been basically, you maybe have a handful of prelims per year. Most people would either waive their preliminary exam, or if it was a misdemeanor offer or something, they could plead. So when I came in, I don't know if it was just like people wanted to try it out and see where I stood on things, but we had so many preliminary exams, like every week. We were scheduling them not just on Tuesday afternoons, we were scheduling them every Wednesday. So it was a lot of fun though. I mean, I got to get back into criminal law. I got to see my friends every day. The ladies that I had just known, in passing, that work at the court in the office. It was really fun. They were a great group of people. They were super nice and inviting. So I just kind of started to really like it. And I think I shocked the heck out of Dave Marvin, who went on to get elected. He had run against the prosecutor that was having the issues, and he won in the primary in August. So obviously the election in November was just kind of like the procedural icing on the cake, and he then took office January 1. He had arranged to have Gary come in as a chief assistant, so he was kind of just aligning his office, getting everybody good to go. And I think I kind of threw a wrench in his plans when I said, I really would like to stay if there's a spot for me. And then one of the other APAs took a job in Kalamazoo, and so then a spot was there for me. So it's been different going to work every day. It's going from being your own boss for 13 years to having a boss. I told Dave that when he hired me, you know who I am, you've known me for years now, and I am who I am, and it's gonna be really hard to change me. And he accepted that. Now, of course, I respect him, obviously, very greatly, and he calls me Hurricane Debbie, which is kind of funny, but I don't know. Sometimes it's not a funny thing, but overall, it's gone really well. And we jokingly say that we're like the Justice League, right? Like all of these attorneys that work together, and we've all had experiences, have a lot of time under our belts. So having this group, it's like a high-powered law firm, and it's been a lot of fun learning from them. And I wouldn't change it. I tell people that it's nice to use my abilities to help victims, and it's not that I didn't want to help defendants before. I obviously felt very strongly about helping defendants and getting through their cases and that sort of thing. But it's a different world when you're on the side where you're trying to make sure that justice is afforded to the individuals, and making sure that the defendants are given a fair trial, a fair shake, a fair deal. And it obviously, there are times where I get to know more than what the general public gets to know about a particular case. And so when people ask about why plea agreements are made and why did you do that, well, I can't really tell you why, but I just hope that people trust that what we're doing at our office is protecting victims, protecting society, and making sure that the laws are followed, and that we have the best possible outcome for everyone involved. And punishment is part of it. So there are times where people go to prison, they go to jail, they have probation, that sort of thing. So all in all, I think that kind of covers that question. Maybe, I don't know, kind of go off on a tangent, but if you have more questions about it, definitely put some comments below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Other than that, thanks for watching again, I guess. And as my son would say, push the like and subscribe button, and I'll try to do more interesting things. Thank you.